It's seed starting season, you guys, and one of the most common questions we get is, why are my seeds taking so long to germinate? So in today's episode, that's what we're going to talk about, is 3 ways to help your seeds germinate 3 times faster. Let's go. All right, so the first method of speeding up seed germination is through what is considered soaking. Now, soaking is just the process of taking a seed. A lot of people will soak bean seeds or corn seeds. Other people may soak hard-bodied seeds or hard-shelled seeds like asparagus or even artichokes. And you can do this with a variety of different seeds. Some seeds don't soak that well. Like you wouldn't want to soak something like a lettuce seed, which is small, or a kale seed or a broccoli seed, which tends to get like a very jelly-like coating on the outside. Think of a chia seed. It gets this kind of mucilaginous coating that kind of clumps them all together. It becomes very difficult to actually space the seeds out. Whereas some of these seeds here, because they have a harder shell on them, they will actually absorb the water, and that will help them germinate up to 3 times as fast because they're actually being absorbed right in that water. Now, you don't want to let them absorb too much water and let them soak too long, otherwise they will quite literally just rot. The ideal time is right around between 6 hours on the low end and 24 hours on the high end. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take the jar, we're just gonna fill it up with some water. And then we're gonna take a seed like bean seed, and we're simply going to pop them into the water. Now, they're going to soak in here. I prefer to soak beans for about 8 to 10 hours on beans. Corn, I'll soak about 8 to 10 hours. With something like artichokes or asparagus, I will soak these about 12 to 16 hours. I typically find that soaking them for longer than that doesn't really add a whole lot of benefit in my case, though you can. I find once they about double in size, that's all the moisture and all the water they're really going to absorb, and they're not going to get a whole lot more benefit from soaking longer. So I typically will just, almost like you're making bread, once it doubles in size, that's when you're good to go. That could take 5 hours, that could take 10 hours. It totally depends on the seed, the temperature of the water, and other variables like that. So when it comes to beans, you're normally expecting 8 to 10 days for germination, whereas through soaking, you can expect somewhere kind of 3 to 5 days. So much faster, and it's very, very easy to do. But what about seeds that you can't soak? What's another method you could speed up germination with those? Well, we're talking about a heat mat. So for seeds that you can't soak, try a heat mat. Now, a heat mat works really well for seeds that need warm soil. So for things like peppers or tomatoes, your warm soil loving crops will benefit from a heat mat. Now, a heat mat is not for all your plants. You really wouldn't want to put things that are cool weather, things like your broccolis, your cabbages, lettuce, and stuff like that, because as we've talked about, a heat mat can be a really wonderful tool in certain circumstances. And one of the circumstances is if the air is cold, if you're out in a garage, it's unheated, or if you're trying to sprout some of those warm soil loving crops and you just need to speed their germination rate up, you're definitely going to do that with a heat mat. Now, one of the things with a heat mat that I would caution you guys on is make sure you get one that has a built-in thermostat. There's lots of heat mats out there. Not all of them have thermostats. And one of the things I've noticed is that a thermostat is really helpful at regulating the temperature. If they have either a built-in thermostat that caps it at about 85 degrees, that is fantastic. This VivoSun does just that. I absolutely love it because it doesn't get much warmer than that, which helps to kind of reduce risk of loss from overheating. Or if you can set the temperature, that is ideal as well, because then that gives you even more control and reduces that margin of error with overheating. So using a heat mat is really, really simple. A lot of people will just plug them in and throw them underneath a flat like this. Now, the heat mats are designed to be about the same dimensions as a standard flat. Some can be a little bit larger, some can be a little bit smaller, but most are going to be about 10 inches wide by about 20 inches long, and that's about a standard flat dimension, so that you can take almost any flat, any greenhouse flat, and sit it right on top and be good. But I've learned throughout the years that you can actually kind of increase the efficiency of a heat mat by actually doing a couple of things. And one is just by taking a piece of cardboard. Believe it or not, taking a piece of cardboard and cutting it out to about the same dimensions as the heat mat. Because what that will do is it'll heat up the air rather than just come in direct contact with the bottom of the mat. So what it'll do is it'll heat the air up in the cardboard because it's corrugated. There's a little air gap there. And that air gap will actually evenly disperse the heat on the seed tray rather than just coming directly in contact with the soil, which can not only be kind of harsh for the plants or the new roots as they're forming, but it can also really create some hot spots and actually kind of create warmer spots and cooler spots where you're going to get inconsistent results. So throwing a little piece of cardboard makes a massive difference. Another thing that I've seen people use other than cardboard is just like a thin layer of plastic. You could take like greenhouse plastic if you have it, or some type of thick like clear poly drop cloth even. Something that's going to essentially just have, you don't even need that much air, just a little bit of air underneath, which is going to help to kind of trap the heat in that air gap, and then it's going to warm the soil up evenly. So just something to kind of sandwich in between the heat mat and your tray that's going to have air is great. You could even use bubble wrap, believe it or not. Bubble wrap would work fine as well. So a couple different options to really make your heat mat work better for you so that you can really utilize all of its benefits. The second thing I'd caution you guys on, even though these can be very beneficial, is leaving them on after the seeds germinate. Once you see 2 or 3 seeds germinating, you have to take the heat mat off, because what that will do is it will actually heat the soil up and cause the plants to start to turn leggy. Even if they're a warm soil loving crop like peppers or tomatoes or things like that, they're going to have issues if the heat stays on. So you got to turn it off. It's only used to speed up germination. So a heat mat can be a super beneficial tool. So now, what about the varieties that you can't soak and really shouldn't go on a heat mat? Well, for that, you have a humidity dome. So when it comes to things like kale, lettuce, collards, broccoli, even things like peppers and tomatoes, you can add a humidity dome. Now, a humidity dome is great because what it does is it actually traps humidity and moisture near the soil surface. You see, plants, when they are newly started, moisture is everything to them. They don't need any nutrients. Heck, they don't even really need any soil. They'll just sprout with just moisture alone. But moisture is the lifeblood of a seedling. And so when they're planted in the soil here, generally you have them about 1/4 inch deep. And the top of the soil dries out the fastest. If they were planted 1 inch to 1.5 inches deep, wouldn't be nearly as much of a concern because it stays damp slightly longer the deeper you go, because there's just less exposure to air. So one way to combat that is by taking a humidity dome and just popping it on top of your seedling trays just like that. And then all of that evaporation is simply going to go into the air. Because it can't leave, it's going to just simply get trapped and it's going to form condensation and it's going to fall back down and be recycled in the tray. So your seeds are exposed to more moisture. Now, much like a heat mat, we've said this before, that you don't want to use a heat mat or a humidity dome longer than you have to. You see, if you put a humidity dome on and the seeds are growing and they're germinating and they're growing just fine, they won't be growing fine for very long. And that's because eventually they're going to start forming things like mold and mildew, because moisture for too long can lead to mold and mildew. And so all you want to do is leave it on until you see the first few sprouts, the same as you would with a heat mat. But this is a tool that can absolutely help you. If you're growing in very dry environments like a desert, or if you're growing in a home that you heat with wood, or even if you're just, out, like we're in a greenhouse right now and it's winter time and the air is fairly dry, having that extra humidity will absolutely help to speed germination rates up to 3 times. So on things like kale, you're looking at 7 to 10 days. What if you could get them to germinate in like 3 to 5 days? That'd be incredible, right? So like that is absolutely amazing. Kohlrabi, again, 7 to 10 days. 3 to 5 days. Lettuce, you're talking like 7 to 10 days. What if you could get it what if you could get it to germinate in like 3 to 5 days? That is speeding the germination rate up by 3 times. And it can really help you to not only get your garden started sooner, but just have a little bit more success, give your garden that much more of an edge. And I will say that you don't have to use any of these tools. I have germinated seeds just fine without soaking, without heat mats, and without humidity domes. But I also know that sometimes I don't need to rush them. I don't need to rush the process. But there certainly has been times where I say, man, I'm in a time crunch. I've got to get these up and growing. I want to get my garden started. I have this planting window that I'm aiming for. And those are times when I can use these tools. And so if you're someone who's impatient, if you're someone who's on a time crunch, if you're someone who just wants to see seedlings sooner because you love to see plants growing, I get it. These are tools that are going to help you out. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did, make sure to throw a like up there, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with a friend if you think they'd enjoy it. That's really the only way this channel grows, is from word of mouth. So thank you guys so very much. We appreciate you. And as always, this is Luke from the MIgardener channel, reminding you to grow bigger. Take care, guys. Bye.